Hey, it's a Thursday edition of the Bold Republic Radio Show. My name's Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. And since it's Thursday, that means Amy Edmonds is on the phone with us to talk about Common Core. And Amy, I have a great idea for the use of Common Core math. I think I found a use for it. Do your taxes with it, and then when the IRS comes to audit you, have them figure it out.
Or even better, remind them under Common Core math, there's no wrong answer.
There you go. Oh, beautiful. Oh, that is brilliant. Okay, I'm going to go with that one. Common Core math, there is no wrong answer. This is the conclusion, and you've got to give me credit for trying.
Exactly. You owe me money, IRS. There's no wrong answers in Common Core.
Yeah, so, okay. And on that note, you have done a little bit of research on some state that apparently has repealed a Common Core, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, so I wanted to give you a brief update because we've talked about this before when I was on. Oklahoma is the only state thus far that was able to pass this early spring a pure sort of repeal the Common Core bill. They passed a bill that basically said we're removing the Common Core, we're going to go back to our old standards. Well, they decided to go back to the old standards, but they gave themselves a year to basically develop a set of standards and have their university, deem them quote unquote college and career ready, because this is one of the requirements that states have to have going forward. And every state's old standards were not. This notion of quote unquote college and career ready standards is something new that's been brought about by Common Core, and so they passed the bill, and people have been very excited about it. But now, as we watch what's happening in Oklahoma, it just continues to tell us how complicated this matter is and how difficult it is, because Oklahoma passed a pure repeal bill. They went ahead and created and certified their old standards as college and career ready. Even before they got that done, Arnie Duncan at the U.S. Department of Education yanked their No Child Left Behind waiver. Now, absent that and absent all the difficulties they've had with the federal government, you would think that they are in great shape, right? Because, hey, they got rid of the Common Core. Well, that's not what's happening in Oklahoma. What's happening in Oklahoma right now is the Common Core is still being taught. The large school districts in Oklahoma have basically said, forget it. We've spent money. You put this. You made us do this. Several years ago. We spent money. We trained teachers. We bought curriculum. We're teaching the Common Core, and it's still being taught in the state of Oklahoma.
All right, now let me play devil's advocate with you here, because we've talked about teaching at the local level and the local officials being in charge of local schools. So if your local elected officials, let's say on a county school board or even at a school for that matter, decide, well, forget the state, forget the federal government, we're going to do what we want, we're going to teach Common Core, what's wrong with that?
Well, exactly. I think that's ultimately the reality of education, is that if we are advocating for a system of local control over our public education system, then we have to recognize that they may choose to teach the Common Core. If parents in that district are not happy, then they have the obvious avenue that everyone has, and that is unelect your school board. Get involved in your local elections. Get involved. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, Glenn. I know that there's tremendous pressure in most states, including Wyoming, to try to do something about the Common Core. I mean, the recent poll showed that over 65% of Wyomingites oppose the Common Core. They don't like it. So how exactly do we get rid of it? I think one of the ways we're learning by looking at examples like Oklahoma is that simply trying to yank it away from the state level isn't going to work. It isn't working in Oklahoma. I've said in the past that it wasn't going to work. You have to ultimately go out, work with your communities, and get buy-in from everybody in order to do these sorts of things. The best possible buy-in is the kind at the very local level.
Okay, so in some cases we also have to worry that they're not just going to try to change the name of the program and just call it something else in order to fool you. But in some cases, they might even try to change the names of just certain parts of it so they can slip bits and pieces of Common Core in. I've seen a few articles to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different tactics being used. In Arizona, the governor used the stroke of her pen to rename the Common Core so that it no longer says Common Core. You get these leaked memos from state agencies where they send out the edict to all their state employees, never use the word Common Core again, don't call it that. So they basically try to remarket it, rebrand it, call it something else. It's the Common Core. Or, as you say, some states have, like Indiana, have said, hey, we're going to go create a new set of standards, and they use the same old process they've always used to create standards, and lo and behold, when you look at the standards, you follow the actual curriculum, the map of how they map out standards, it's the Common Core. But, they're saying, hey, it's the new Indiana standards. So you've got all kinds of tactics that are being used out there.
Okay, let's go back to the state of Wyoming real quick here, because in the state of Wyoming, we now will have a new superintendent of public instruction, and when I was interviewing her, she was completely opposed to Common Core, which means she might butt heads with a few people over at the state legislature or the governor, but you're a lot closer. You can walk to where her office is going to be. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of people watching and looking and hoping that the new incoming superintendent, is going to follow through and get involved and help sort of mold a process by which Wyoming can, on the ground, get itself out of this mess, get a new set of standards, facilitate the districts to remove the Common Core, and really go for exceptional standards in the state. So I think we're all waiting and hoping that that's going to be what happens.
Okay. Well, it's going to be interesting because I've already heard some backlash, if you will, and I get a kick out of this, from the Democrat Party. They were hoping to have, but, of course, the Democrat that was running for that office didn't even come close. It was not even a close election, so they really had no choice. But the Democrat Party in Wyoming still wants to see these new standards brought in. Now, I kind of wonder, though, let's take a look at the Republican Party in the state of Wyoming. Have we been clear enough to them, now that the election is over, have we been clear enough to them, or do they still want to push Common Core through?
Oh, I think they still want to push Common Core through. What's interesting about the election, both in Wyoming and if you look nationally, there's been quite a bit of, post-mortem going on over the last few days, and just a tremendous amount of anti-Common Core candidates won. It was definitely in many places, and we have specific examples where the Common Core was the issue, and the anti-Common Core candidate won. So and obviously here in Wyoming, the superintendent of public instruction race is a great one to look at and say that. We had a clear distinction between Jillian Balow and the Democrat candidate, and she won. So I think Common Core isn't going away. Like I said, the most recent poll that I saw the University of Wyoming did was over 65% of Wyomingites oppose it. So, and you just, in my job, Glenn, I continue to get emails from parents, people who somehow got my name or got my email, that want to tell me about what their kids learning, want to tell me about what, how difficult, how ridiculous, on and on and on it goes.
Okay, what about the governor in this case, since, of course, we wind up with Matt Mead again? Has he changed his tune? Because I saw him sort of waffling back and forth over this past year on Common Core.
I mean, I think ultimately this process is going to be in the hands of both the state board and the legislature. The governor continues to sort of watch, and I think that's what he's going to do, is watch to see what they're going to do, how they want to do it. I hope he takes a more active role, and I could be wrong. Maybe he will. I haven't seen that yet, but it might happen. We'll see. After an election, all hopes are new again, aren't they, Glenn, for at least 48 hours?
Yeah, well, I remember the last time we voted for a governor, I was one of those who voted for somebody else altogether just to send a message to Cheyenne, and they got the message for about a week. And then everything went right back to normal again. So this is, well, okay, let's go back to, it was Oklahoma that we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
it's an amazing story. I mean, because obviously, in my capacity, what I do here at the Wyoming Liberty Group, one of the things that are important is for us to look at what's happening elsewhere and get, innovative solutions. And sometimes there's no point reinventing the wheel. Let's go out and look and see what are other states doing, what's happening. We certainly don't want to recreate a mistake that's already, been unfolded in another state. So I've watched other states. Oklahoma's one of the ones that I've watched. The mother who worked very hard to pass this repeal piece of legislation, wrote this amazing blog about, 7 reasons why the Common Core repeal in Oklahoma isn't. And this is from a woman, you have to remember, who advocated for the bill, who pushed for it, and who still, believes that what she did was right. And I think it was. She did the best she could in the state, dealing with, both fighting people who want the Common Core, and then sadly what we have in Wyoming, infighting amongst the people who are against it, who all have different ideas on how to do this. She got it done, but now she's basically just saying, here's what's happening in Oklahoma. This is a huge mess. Now we've got this problem. And she has 4 really fascinating, basically, here are my solutions. This is what I'm going to give you now. I've passed the repeal bill, and here's what I say. And the first one is the one that I think is just most critically important. And she says, parents, if you can remove your children from public schools, do it.
Wow, it's gotten that bad that she's just saying, get your kids out of school?
That's basically her first thing. She just says, listen, I've fought, she's like so many moms that I've talked to that were not political, had nothing to, and they've spent, I've been working with moms that are going on 2 years, Glenn, 2 years of their life, suddenly involved. She's like that. She's like, I've been involved for almost 2 years in Oklahoma. I fought, I pushed, I talked, I went, I was up there, I got my people. And I got it passed, and now here we are. We've got school districts in Tulsa who say, forget it, we're still teaching it. We're not going to remove it. We've spent too much money. Her number 1 recommendation, if you can, remove your children from public school. Her second recommendation, if you can't remove them, practice civil disobedience. Object to every single lesson, every single textbook, everything that comes to you that is Common Core. Object to every single thing. Go to the school board meeting, bring it up, go to the administration, object.
Well, here's part of what worries me is, on the one hand, I saw this past election was a pretty big victory, especially because the Republicans took on so many unions across the country, including teachers' unions, and won. I mean, just completely stomped them. But, Amy, these people never give up. So if they don't come, all they do is kind of like, if you remember the whole scandal with the Acorn scandal, with that group being found to have rigged elections and so many other scandalous things they did. All Acorn did was rename the group, hang a new shingle out. They're still out there. They haven't gone anywhere. They've just rebranded themselves. So I'm not just worried about Common Core being rebranded, but a lot of these teachers' unions, a lot of these tests, a lot of the curriculum is just going to come our way in another form. And if they can put a little more sugar on it, Amy.
Yeah, and Glenn, I mean, I think you pretty much know this. The reality is, the more power that government has, the more government grows, the more these folks realize that they just have to keep pushing, that they can get what they want by pushing. The biggest solution, and it's the one that I think is the most powerful, and it's Jenny White from Oklahoma's number 3 solution, and that is, she talks about what we have to do is we have to create education savings accounts. We have to create ways for parents to get out of the public school system and still be able to direct their taxpayer dollars. In the larger scope of what you just talked about, what we have to do is we have to keep pushing and be vigilant. We have to remove the power of government. It has to start shrinking. We cannot continue to grow it. That's simply the reality. Because these people, as you say, are always there and they don't go away. We're not going to get them to go away, but if we can get the power that they use to shrink, which is government, that's the winning solution.
All right. Hang on just a moment, Amy, because I got to pay a couple of bills here. And then there's people out there who honestly think if they homeschool, they're free and clear. All right, Amy, I got some interesting stories for you. A little while ago, out of New Jersey, a mom decided to take her kid out of school and homeschool. And lo and behold, she gets some threatening letters from somebody in the state because she has to be teaching certain curriculum and she has to be giving certain tests to the kid. And if she refuses to do the following, plus she has to show what she is teaching the child. And if she refuses to do this, well, there's going to be consequences. Now, eventually, the state backed off because she went public with this. But I've been telling homeschoolers for a while, Amy, watch out. Even if you're trying to get your kid out of Common Core or other disasters by homeschooling, they're coming your way.
Yeah, and that's an example. The state of New York is a state that has basically regulated even homeschooling or attempted to regulate homeschooling through statutes. So here's another example of the best solution would be remove government completely. Thankfully, in Wyoming, we certainly have problems, and so I need to be careful. I shouldn't say thankfully, but in Wyoming, we aren't as regulated as the state of New York. In other words, the school district does not have to demand to see lesson plans or anything like that. However, in Wyoming, parents still do need to let the district know that, hey, my child is being homeschooled. Here's what I'm doing. They send them a letter. The district then checks the box, and we all go on our merry way. Quite frankly, that's probably more regulation than we need. And there are also other regulations around homeschooling that should disappear. We can't have multifamily homeschooling in the state of Wyoming. That's a huge issue. Students, a homeschooling ability to interact with the local school district as far as extracurricular activities, those sorts of things. Remember, these are people who are paying taxes and supporting the public school system that have chosen to educate their children at home. So there's issues, but that's an example in New York of regulating homeschooling.
Okay. Well, has the state of Wyoming come to any homeschoolers yet and said you have to take the following test? Or
No.
No. Okay.
No, they don't have the ability to do that because they don't have the statutory authority. And I have not heard an example. I shouldn't say no. There may be some overzealous school districts, but I have not heard of an example like that. But there's that's an example of overregulation. The other way that homeschoolers are affected that is very important for them to understand is through college placement exams. Mm-hmm. But here's where homeschoolers who are still, sort of sitting out there saying, hey, I know the Common Core fight is raging on, but I'm educating my children at home, so I'm safe. Actually, you're not, because you have, if you, like most parents, want your child to go on to college, your child is going to take a college placement exam. Or, in the public schools, they also take AP courses, advanced placement courses. So there's two areas where they got you.
Okay. Well, this is where, again, sneaky, one way or another, they always find some excuse. And what about the I'll play devil's advocate again. The argument, well, how do we know you're doing anything with your kids? How do we know you just decided you're not going to teach your kids anything and you're just going to be a truant? How do we know that mom teaching the kids is up to the standards of other kids in the nation?
Well, the first argument here's the thing: we have got to get two thoughts, I think, in our head. First of all, we've got to trust parents, and second of all, creating statutes based on exceptions is very bad policy. It's a very bad idea. Are there people who have obviously had their children taken away, have been abusive, or have not done what they should do as parents? Yes. Is that the exception? Yeah. Not the rule.
See, there's the thing. They don't trust the parents, but for some reason they trust the government, which actually I trust. My trust is the opposite, but okay, maybe that's just me. Amy, thanks for coming on. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Glenn.